Or maybe I'm a
It's the
little
official
fast.
clock, though.
Remember, I just put 5 hours back on this.
Oh, yeah. I got it at 7:30 now.
Okay.
Yep, so do I.
I'd like to call this regular city council meeting of March 23rd, 2015 to order. We'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call shows we do have one council member absent. She is on vacation. And department heads are here.
Except for Lloyd. Chief here? Chief's
I take
He's
that
on
back.
vacation.
Oh, he's on vacation
We
too.
have Lieutenant Sovic in his place.
No, you're not in the right spot.
I'd like to move to excuse Ms. Kopkowski.
Support.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approve the minutes of March 9. Do we see anything that stands out?
I move the minutes.
Second.
Okay, for discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And then, there is no bills to worry about on this round. And the approval of the agenda.
I'll move the agenda that was emailed to us this afternoon.
I'll support that.
It's just,
Did that meet,
It just pertained regarding executive session.
did it meet notice? I mean,
Yes.
You know,
Yes. All it was clarifying exactly what the executive session was for.
okay.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
aye.
Opposed? Public comment. At this time, anybody wishes to speak about any item not listed on the agenda, they may come up to the microphone, state your name and address.
My name is Charles Spaller. I live at 278 Wellington Drive. And my little thing here is, this is a letter that I turned into the council, and it's about the recreation center. And I've been a senior member at the at the senior center now, and I've talked with a lot of the seniors there, and they are not happy with having to get a increase in their taxes or anything of this nature, and they would just as soon keep the senior center at the South Lyon High School, and that would make everybody happy. And a lot of our seniors live across the street at Colonial Acres. And McCaddy Park, ooh, that's kind of rough, because there's a lot of green space there and the kids can run around there. It would do probably just as well to put it someplace other than at McCaddy Park. And we also have a concern with the traffic. As everybody knows, there's rush hour in the morning and a rush hour at night. And trying to get in and out, you know, if people are there, it would be kind of hard. And it would be a lot better, you know, if you could put it someplace other than in the city. I don't think would really like to see another brick and mortar building go. And for the kids, if they want to swim, they've got South Lyon High School, and Parks and Rec has lifeguards there that come in after school hours and they can swim then. And because we get one of them from the Parks and Recs that takes care of us on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And according to our lady there that runs the place, Linda, she's been trying to get another lifeguard. And it's kind of tough for her to get it, but she's working on it. And hopefully that, she'll get it. And it would be nice if we could, find a new location. And I'm not sure if Salem is going to come back in on it, but they backed out. Last year, I was doing the same thing, I attended one of the meetings, and it was held at the high school, and everything, they couldn't give you a direct answer as to how much it's gonna cost, what the fee would be to use the place. And when I was going to check on the second meeting, and that was in Green Oak, they said that meeting was canceled because Salem backed out. And I thought, oh, okay. So, whatever.
Okay.
And I just hope and pray that a good decision comes, and I hope that when this does come, I hope that we can keep the senior center at South Lyon High School. I mean, it's been there for a long time. So-
We are, just so you know, we are in receipt of your letter. It is in our packet, so we do have your petition letter, and it is on record.
Did you get one of the signed one?
Yes,
Yeah.
right here, we've
Okay,
got it,
good.
just so you know that. So, we'll certainly take your thoughts in consideration,
Thank you.
right?
Yeah, appreciate your
Thank you
comments.
for your time.
Usually we don't make a comment on a comment like that, but as far as your senior center, that was voted on by the people way back when, and I don't foresee that being changed as far as the senior center in the foreseeable future anyways. I mean, that was a special deal that we voted for back in the 90s,
Okay,
added on there. Yep, you're right, it's a great place.
it is. We have a lot of fun there.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Okay.
Good evening. Carl Richards, 390 Lennox. I want to go over a few little points as fast as I can. And basically, it's all good news. Okay, first item up, gentlemen, ladies, I've been talking to the railroad, okay? And although I'm not going to go into it, other than just let you know, something's going to go happen later on this year. And you're all going to be very happy, okay? And it would be premature of me to unload something on you in your lap before other people have mentioned it, or you have asked questions on your own to see what is going to happen. Therefore, I'm just alerting you that something good is going to happen, okay? A little bit later in the year, and I think you'll all be very happy. Item number 2, okay? In regards to our history progress, okay, things are shaping up nicely for the springtime here. We've got the spring cleanup set, and we're cooperating with the Methodist Church this year on it. I believe the date is the 12th of April, okay? And I'm going to pitch in as much as I can. Number 2 item with the history, our one-room schoolhouse program, where we have 35 busloads of kids, okay, come through. I believe it's 2nd, 3rd, and 4th graders for the most part, okay? I've agreed to help this year. I've never done this before. Greg Jacobs, myself, and Gary Wickersham have agreed to pitch in because Linda said it's just too much for me. I can't do this, people, unless you're going to help out. I can't handle all these children, okay, by myself anymore. So we're all going to throw our hat in the ring and do the best we can when it comes that time through the month of May into the first week of June. Anyway, the door's open for some more people who want to help. Number 3 item, Memorial Day Parade. We're expanding our situation in the Memorial Day Parade a little bit. We've ordered new flags, and I hope we have the same supply of the tractors and the floats that we've had in the past. Okay? And the last item is a brand-new deal that's come up through the Historical Society. Oh, there's one more I'm going to mention. We're starting a Heritage Day Festival, okay? You'll be hearing more about this in the future from other people. This is just a copy that was presented at the meeting, okay? Obviously, I didn't do this, but it's going to be a good deal. It's going to go over good. We're planning for 150 to 100 to 150 people, and we're going to have a pig roast. And some other things are going to go on. And I think you'll all be very pleased to know all of that. Also, one thing I didn't mention at the first I should have touched on. The society and the commission are both coming together. We're very close to another building, close as we've been in 20 years, to securing another building for McCaddy Park. Now, I've been on the ball with this to the best of my ability. I've notified planning, should be in the notes that you get. I've notified Parks and Recs, talked it over with them. I'm going to go on the walk with them the 6th of April, rescheduled for next month, and take one more look at this. And anyways, it's not premature for me to mention this to you because we've been after this for close to 20 years before I got even active. I'm just letting you know we're getting close. Okay. Thank you very much, and hope we have a good meeting.
Anybody else wish to speak on anything not listed? All right, we can move on to old business, which is a second reading to the amendment to the City of South Lyon ordinance adding regulations concerning the medical use of marijuana and related land uses and activities. Tim, do you want to comment?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. One of the comments that was made at the last meeting where the first reading was approved was related to subsection M in 102-498, which addresses the inspection from time to time of a medical marijuana caregiver growing facility by city officials. In doing some additional research, there is a provision in the Medical Marijuana Act that indicates that having a registered caregiver card or a qualifying patient identification card does not provide probable cause or a basis for which to be subject to inspection, whether you're person or otherwise. So at this point, my recommendation is that language as is should be deleted from the ordinance if council wishes to move forward and approve the second reading. I think, in looking at this issue, I think the probable cause issue, anybody from the city that would go in and inspect these facilities would need that kind of probable cause. However, I could look into, I went back and looked at some other ordinances, and there may be a way to do it through the special land use process or approval, or some of the other communities have used a licensing scheme. And some of the analogous examples that were used, such as liquor control or health inspector, is more of a licensing issue, which may provide a different mechanism for inspection. I can look at that and look at the special land use issue to determine whether that is enough like a license that the city could have a basis to go in and determine whether a particular location having that approval is in compliance with the conditions placed on the special land use.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mike.
I am all in favor of that. I know I called you this afternoon. I'm concerned more about the compliance with the act as opposed to the law enforcement aspect of it. I mean, when they enacted this, I mean, it was 72 plants for caregivers. And I just want to be able to make sure that the city is in a position where we can regulate compliance with the act, meaning not from the law enforcement point of view, but similar to like a health inspector going into a restaurant to make sure that the food and the service and the preparation complies with the health code. Same with the fire code, the fire department going in to make sure that the business complies with the fire code. But I'm just saying, right now, the act is, our ordinance is silent as to how we can make sure that these caregivers are complying with the act. And I understand the concern with law enforcement doing it, but there should be some venue or avenue for us to go in to make sure that the establishment isn't compliant with the requirements of the act. So I'm all in favor of looking at somehow doing that, so that we can make sure that if they have 72 plants, if they say they have 72 plants, we count them, they have 72 plants. That's
Yeah,
my concern.
I think the concept is to include some language that would provide the city with a right to inspect to ensure compliance with the proposed
But not from
ordinance
right.
regulations.
But not from a law enforcement point of view, just like a building inspector going in
Right.
to ensure that the establishment is up to the building code.
At this point, I don't have recommended language without looking further at the issue.
Okay, thank you.
Harvey?
Yeah, I agree with Mike. I'm concerned that I'm seeing news stories about people who have more than their 12 or 72, and then they're saying, well, my plants are dying, so I'm cloning several others. 72 has got to be 72, not 72.5. And if it's in the language of the law, there's got to be some way to verify that. Otherwise you have no control.
Right.
So I'd like to see something that allows that control. I don't care if it's in the venue of a health inspection or whatever, but we've got to have some way, I think, of assuring ourselves that there's compliance with the statute. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, and if, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just, the fact that they put these metrics in the language of the act, it seems to beg the question, why have those numbers in there if there's no ability to validate that they're not exceeding what they're allowed? You have, 2.5 ounces and up to 72 plants. And this is something that I meant to mention at our last meeting, that 72 is only the product if the caregiver themselves are a card-carrying member.
Right.
And, member, it sounds like a club, I guess. But, we should be able to at least validate that, you've got however many cards you need to get however many plants you intend to maintain. And with the number of 2.5 ounces to be allowed on site. But at the same time, to what end? What are we gaining except for the fulfillment that they're not exceeding the law? The act itself. Are we preventing them from an added revenue stream? Or, what's the biggest concern in this?
To ensure that they're complying with the terms of the act, not only the 60 plants or 72, but that the location is in a secured environment, that there's no access to it other than by the caregiver.
Now, that part makes perfect
but
sense to
that's
me.
what I'm looking at. I'm not just focusing on the 60 plants or the 72 plants. I want to make sure they're in compliance with all aspects of the act.
But once they've established that they are a
no.
secure location, they fulfilled that aspect of it. Is there a real need to endlessly
No,
monitor that?
I'm not saying endlessly. We could put a time constriction or something like that. I would just, it's like
Well,
the same.
that's something that can be a workaround, though. You
Right.
put a time limit on it. If their intent is to be malicious about this, they're going, if you say 40 days, they're going to go at 39 days and make sure everything's
no.
in compliance.
I'm saying the same type of inspection schedule can apply if you make an analogy between like health inspections. How often does the county do health inspections? Or like the gasoline inspections that you see the inspectors coming out to the gas stations to make sure that everything's on board as far as what, you're making sure you're getting a gallon of gas.
Right. No,
I
I
mean,
think that makes
yeah.
a good deal of sense. Now, what I don't know is, in the event that they are not in compliance, what is the penalty that they could be subject to?
Well, that's a question.
The loss of license, or?
Well, you do have an ability, this would be a special land use, and you do have provisions in the zoning ordinance to revoke such an approval. For example, one of the things that if a registered caregiver got approval for this use and then lost their caregiver card, they're obligated to advise the city of that, and then we would go through a process of revoking that special land use because there's no longer any legal authorization through the state registry program to engage in that use. So you would revoke the special land use. Similar, I think, that it's a valid question. If you are aware of noncompliance, I think you have both a zoning issue and, depending on what it is, you may have a law enforcement issue as well.
Now, in the event that they lose a patient for whatever reason, they pass or they just no longer feel they need the treatment, whatever, is the onus on the caregiver to inform the city that they are down one patient, even if they intend to, to fill that gap, but as soon as they are not carrying that patient, do we get notice of that?
I did not include, this ordinance as proposed does not include any notice provision for changes in the number of patients connected with a caregiver. However, the concept here is you still have to comply with the act, and that's stated clearly in the ordinance. So if a caregiver had the full amount, himself or herself, plus 72 plants, and they lose a patient, they still have to be in compliance with the act as to the number of plants. And I don't want to get too far into the, for lack of a better term, the metaphysics of how this statute operates in the real world, because a lot of this depends on the paperwork through the state department that administers the program. So if they're still showing the right number of patients, you can have that much marijuana or plants.
Well, and it stands to reason if the state doesn't have notice, maybe the caregiver doesn't have
Yeah,
notice.
I mean, really, the idea here is to not recreate the wheel at the local level, but use the state system as a backdrop. And really, again, the idea here was to identify where the city believes to be a proper, reasonable location for this type of activity, given that it's been recognized and allowed under state law.
That makes sense, but I think that it's important to know what the repercussions of failure to comply with the act would be, because I think that would certainly have an impact on my view of how heavily we should pursue monitoring whether they're in compliance.
I think, if you look at the conditions, there would clearly be violations that violate the act and would raise criminal penalties. There could be, and they would also raise a violation of this particular ordinance. So you have two different types of violations. There are some that would be just a zoning violation under this ordinance. And then you could issue a civil infraction ticket for violation of the zoning ordinance if it's not a criminal aspect. You don't have to go immediately to one violation to revoke the special land use. There is you have some administrative discretion on how to enforce. For example, in a zoning violation, you don't typically, your first step would be to issue a civil infraction or to achieve compliance.
Right.
That's really the primary goal, is when you deal with enforcement on code issues or zoning ordinance, you're trying to achieve compliance, not necessarily penalize somebody.
But I mean, if there was a clear and overt willingness to exceed all the limits that are placed in the act, I mean, you'd want to be able to respond accordingly, so, yeah. all right.
Those would all be fact dependent, and you would proceed accordingly.
Procedurally, if we wanted, I can't speak for the rest of the, I mean, personally, I would like to look at some of that language as far as regulating, zoning use or special land use or some type of, some type of way we can, make sure that the act is being complied with. Procedurally, since we've already approved the first reading, would we have to do a motion to table, or how would we do this?
You could
Procedurally.
table, which indefinitely table it without date. Postpone would be you could postpone it without a specific date, it would be to the next meeting, or you could postpone to a specific meeting.
Or for an act, if the request was to come up with whatever the penalties might be or whatever you're pursuing, when Tim puts that language together, then it could be brought back.
Right.
I think we should do an indefinite one.
To table it until this, the word, okay, I'll bring the motion then to table.
The second reading.
I'm sorry.
The second reading.
The second reading of the amendment to the City of South Lyon ordinance adding regulations concerning the medical use of marijuana and related land uses and activities.
I'll support that.
For-
Well,
okay,
without, I mean, there's no expectation, we're simply tabling it.
we're just tabling it. That's an indefinite.
And we can bring it back with a motion to take from the table.
I mean,
Gives him time to work with it.
I just want to make sure we
Well, I
do
know,
it
but I
right.
mean,
Or we could,
does he understand exactly what the objective is to find out information to?
yeah, the language regarding
Feel like you do?
regulation.
I understand the motion. What I would be doing is coming up with some recommended language. It may be more than one option, and to present those to council, at which point I would run it through the city manager to add it to the agenda, a motion to remove it from the table, and we could move forward in that fashion.
I
That's
mean,
fine.
if you're comfortable for what you're looking for, then I'm fine with tabling
Yes,
it
I
indefinitely.
understand the issue, and I'm interested in figuring out how to address this.
Okay.
Okay.
And that would replace that, up on page 5, M, Aaron's M.
Correct.
Right.
Sub M of 498.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay. We move on to new business, of which we have 4 items listed in new business. Consider recommendation to be the lead applicant on the Joint Safe Routes to School grant being prepared to improve safety in the 9-mile Pontiac Trail area. And I know, Lynn, that's been thrown kind of into the city's lap, even though that's more of a township dealing.
Well, it's actually a joint intergovernmental issue, and I actually am very happy to be a part of it. It is one of those things where Lyon Township and I had both started to take the lead on this. They have hired their engineer prior to finding out at our meetings with the state and the SEMCOG coordinators that it has to be an Act 51 party that applies for the grant, which leaves just the city or the county road commission as potential applicants for this grant program. The road commission and I have had discussions, and they would prefer that the city be the applicant due to the fact that they have negligible actual involvement in it, other than the fact that they control Pontiac Trail. The improvements that we're really going to be seeking are in the township and in the city for this traffic signal, for improved sidewalks, different other safety aspects in the area.
Are we going to be building their sidewalks for them, though, with
Can't
this?
happen, right?
Lyon Town, it would be a joint where it would be divided out. The sidewalks that would be built in Lyon Township would be funded by their portion of the match. Sidewalks built in the city would be built by our portion of the match of the grant. Just like with any grant application, there is a requirement for approximately a 25% match from the intergovernmental bodies. And when everything is put together, we would have the engineer break down the costs for the sidewalks to make sure that the city does not pick up any of the costs associated with the township.
It'll be done sort of at unit prices then.
Right, it's done at unit prices.
Yes.
That's how all construction bids are for this type of a project.
That sounds good.
So somebody want to make a move to start the process?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Glenn.
I'll make
Or
the
Joe.
motion to agree to be the lead applicant for the SR2S grant and designate the city manager to continue working with the other involved parties to complete the preliminary grant process and bring the final application to council for approval.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, consider a resolution of support for the state ballot issue of Proposal 1 that's coming up in May. The MML has been asking the different cities and so forth to try to approve some proposals. This proposal as far as support, and I know it's confusing to many people, and it has been, I call it got some pork added to it. People aren't quite sure what they're voting for by voting for it, but you see that there would be a sales tax increase of up to 7% from 6%. But besides fixing the roads, you're talking about added support for the schools. And I believe community colleges is included, but not universities. I know both Lynn and I were in a joint conference call with the governor on this a week and a half ago, and actually, South Lyon led the way on questioning. Yeah, I thought that was pretty good. And he seemed to have an answer for everything, which you might expect. But again, it's going to take more money to get what we need to fix. We also, Harvey and myself and Bob met with Oakland County Road Commission, and they had a chart that showed that within 2 years, it was, can you recall, Bob, exactly? It was a substantial amount of roads would be fixed
Absolutely.
within a 2-year period over what would be happening if we didn't have this
Yeah,
proposal.
I believe he spoke in the first year, there wouldn't be much, because weren't they paying off debt that was required to, was it the road commission, Harvey? I'm not
I
sure.
think that was MDOT.
The MDOT, thank you, yeah. And then after that was
Then
paid
they'll
down,
build roads.
Uh-huh.
after that was paid down, they would start, the one thing they didn't address is how they're gonna allocate who gets first roads repaired and stuff like that, but with the money going to individual cities, you know, in township areas, we could start doing work in-house and
We hammered them pretty good because of the fact that Lyon Township was there, was at their offices, and certainly pointed out all the growth going on. We're gonna have, they gotta recognize this corner of the county finally. It's time to,
I found it interesting, Oakland County has 27,000 miles of county roads. Can you get over that?
yeah.
Staggering to think of.
And then what was the percentage were dirt?
Yeah,
770 miles.
yeah. Yeah.
Ted,
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
did we ever get that report back from HRC?
Yes, we did.
Yes, they brought it back to me shortly before I went out on leave. The intention is to bring it to the council for your review and for them to make a presentation in early April.
Okay, and just so everybody knows, this was on the roads. We did a road study in the city of South Lyon. Okay.
Called PASER study. You gotta be certified in doing it, and they spoke to that day when I was with Ted and Harvey at that, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Joe.
Yeah, this, what's in front of us, it's, we all know that these roads are terrible. I mean, busted rims, flat tires, everything. We need, the roads need to be fixed, there's no doubt about that. What I wanted to speak about was what's actually before us and what we're being asked. And what we're asked to do is to, as a government body, to take a position of how people should be voting. With that, I don't necessarily agree with that, because I feel that voting is a very personal thing that is up to the individual. And excuse me, but I feel it's a little, I'm going to say, out of line to have a government say, this is how you should vote, especially when it's something you do behind closed doors, and nobody should really tell you how to do that. So, I mean, I don't want to take a position if these roads should be fixed or not fixed, or the tax increase, but, I mean, it's just I have a problem with telling people how to vote. So, in this particular proposal in front of us, I really have difficulty supporting
Well,
it.
it's called a resolution of support for Proposal 1, and that's exactly what it is.
Right, right.
We as a body, do we support the need? We know there's a need. But anyways, Harvey, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of comments that I'd like to make. First of all, I don't see how restoring the earned income tax credit does anything about potholes or bridges or highways. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Secondly, if you look at the slides, and the first slide and the last slide, or PowerPoint, that the road commission showed us is that there is no Plan B. And clearly, the people in Lansing are not reading the same letters to the editor and talking to the same people I am, because I'm not talking to anyone who's supporting it. And I believe it's just as irresponsible that there is no Plan B, as the legislators were, in kicking it down the road and requiring the voters to make the decision that they didn't have the guts to make. So I'm going to have a hard time supporting this resolution. In fact, I won't have any part of,
Well, instead of going on record, I sense a consensus happening that it would maybe be best if we don't even vote on it, period, and then that way we haven't
maybe it
really.
doesn't get maybe nobody moves to
Yeah.
support it,
Exactly.
and
And that
maybe nobody seconds it.
And that was kind of my point, was I really don't think
course.
this is something that should really be in front of us. I mean, it's just, it's not something for a government body to be telling people what to do. so.
I don't have any misgivings at all with us coming to some kind of a consensus. This whole thing is kind of analogous to a Department of Defense pitch to build the F-22, where legislators end up making sure that all the major metropolises have some component that goes into that plane so they can hold political sway over those areas. This has hit all the marks. It's got money in here for schools, it's got money in here for state shared revenues to try to entice cities to buy into it. It's got money in there for roads, and that was the initial insight to actually have this legislation being looked at. And unfortunately, our legislators in Lansing failed miserably by not taking a leadership position and coming up with some answer that's short of trying to get this incredible political solution here to take the hook off of them and put it on the backs of the voters here. I don't have any misgivings at all. I will not support this either on this body or at the voting poll, so.
Okay. Okay, then I'm going to ask the question. Is anybody who wants to make the motion for support of this ballot issue?
Well, I'll make a motion that we do not support this motion,
I'll second that,
or
absolutely.
this language.
Don't all jump at once, please.
I don't know, is the state going to start a list of the non-supporters? I don't know.
That's up to them, but we can do what we can.
I would say just let it die on the table.
Well, Mr. Mayor, if I could,
Well, there's a motion.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
If I could just add as well, I mean, what they're asking us to do at the government level is not anything more than symbolic. I mean, so they're asking cities to pass this, and this resolution, does it really change anything? Not much. The South Lyon voters are smart enough to know how to do their homework. I mean, they don't need the government telling them how to vote. I mean, it's that simple.
And I'd like to add one more thing. The thing that's probably the most damaging in my eyes is that this changes Michigan's constitution to allow this revenue generation. And that's something that future legislators will end up having the ability to keep the citizens of Michigan from acting on this to try to roll it back down in the event that we come to some solution short of having to put it in sales tax.
So send your legislators emails and letters and phone calls and tell them to start on Plan B.
We're in the middle of a motion right now.
Discussion.
Okay, we are in discussion. We'll let you, go ahead. Come up to the microphone, though.
I have a quick question for the governor. Have him sell the governor's mansion on Mackinac Island. That'll bring in a lot of money. That'll help fill the roads. Next time you talk to him, you can tell him I said that too.
Well, you've just been televised.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Spall. So what exactly is the motion again?
To not support this.
Resolution.
And that was seconded by Bev, was it? And further discussion? Okay, all in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Consider allowing the city manager to submit an application to hire a 12-week summer intern subsidized by the MGMLA Fellowship Program.
This is something new. Although MGMLA has done this for several years, I don't believe South Lyon has ever participated in the past.
A long time ago.
did they a long time ago? It would allow us to have a summer intern to work on specific projects, give them an opportunity to work with a governmental body as well as city government while they're in their MPA program, getting ready to be city staff, department heads, management
That's-
analysts, things like that.
That's something that somebody like that can look for grants too, right?
Yep, they can do multiple things. I have come up with a couple of different things and working with HRC on identifying some of the road projects that we need to do, helping me implement a 10-year capital improvement plan that all the departments can get behind. Right now, I've asked them for a 5-year. So there's several different things that we could ask the intern to do, including seeking out different grant opportunities for the city.
Well, this is subsidized or is it paid for?
It's paid for. Basically, $3,000 in the costs come from the university that the student is attending, and $3,000 for their pay comes from the MGMLA Association.
So we're basically just providing a platform for them then?
Right. What they do is the $6,000 comes to the city, and then we pay it back out to the intern.
Okay. Any questions?
This is, I don't know why we would even think twice about this.
Okay, well,
I make a motion that we support the, allowing the city manager to apply to hire the 12-week summer intern.
I'll second.
further discussion?
Yeah, one small comment, and that's, I think we should put them in the DPW yard too, to get them fully well-rounded. And they do that at Ford, they put them on the line when you come in new, we should do the same.
I could use a driver.
I wasn't thinking that much.
I
but-
thought you'd put them, yeah,
Your driver's in your golf bag.
all right, okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Budget amendments,
All right, you have in front of you budget amendments for approximately 7 different departments or sections of the city budget: administration, fire, public works, parks and rec, cultural arts, major streets, and water and sewer. I would ask council how you would like to approach this. Do you want to do it by department or by individual line item budget amendment?
The only one I'm curious about is still the increase at Parks and Rec due to gas prices. I mean,
Did you?
prices had fallen a dollar a gallon over the last year or
I
so.
think we were mandating that they mow more often, or volunteer park, for instance, where the ball fields are, because they were getting out of hand, they were playing in grass that tall. And because it grows, it's low air, it gets any moisture, it stays, and it really grows, and they had to keep on top of that. I can see where they've had extra usage.
And I don't know, you should have gotten in the email I sent you on Friday, a copy of the accounts for the Parks and Recs and their expenditures for gas and oil. In our last fiscal year, that department, just for diesel fuel, spent $7,600. There was only $4,500 budgeted this year. We've already spent $5,000, and we still have 3.5 months left in the fiscal year, which is the reason for the increase. A lot of the expenditures hit us very hard last summer. We had a July diesel bill of almost $1,500, as well as an October diesel bill of $1,200, and those both took place before the significant decrease in fuel prices. And diesel has not seen as much of a decrease in their price as regular fuel.
It has seen a decline, but it hasn't been as great as gasoline, right?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
One thing that stood out for me was the Cultural Arts Commission. Just to kind of put some numbers to it, 2013, 2014, we put aside $6,501. The proposed that we had was, for 14-15 was $4,850. But now for the amended 2014, 2015, it's reduced to $1,035. Personally, I know that the Cultural Arts Commission has done a lot. They're bringing the DIA this summer, and their world-famous art's going to be displayed all over town. It's going to bring a lot of exposure to our city. People, I can imagine, come from other cities to check it out. And I think they have a lot of good stuff coming down the horizon. So I think I'd say it's almost a shame to be reducing their budget by so much. It would be nice, personally, I'd like to see it stay at the 4,850, which is proposed, and not cut that, because we shouldn't be cutting the arts.
Well, the reason this was brought forward is in reviewing the initial city council minutes from when the Cultural Arts Commission was created, the minutes reflect that the council had only intended to fund this commission for 1 year, and that they were responsible for doing fundraising following that. The 1,035 reflects the fundraising that they did in the last fiscal year, as well as any funds that they have taken in thus far this year. But I leave it up to the council to decide if the arts is something that they want to continue funding in the community, keeping in mind it's also a city commission, and you leave the door open for other commissions to begin then asking to be funded separately. The Historic Commission as opposed to the Historic Society, that type of thing. Yes, we fund the Historic Commission, but that is so that they can maintain the historic village. So you have to look at.
That the city owns.
Right, that the
Yes,
city
Right,
owns.
their property is ours.
Well,
I mean, me personally, I think they did a great job raising the money. Unfortunately, I was on vacation when they had the fundraiser, but I still was able to donate. But it's amazing how much they've accomplished, and they have raised money. Talking to the Cultural Arts Commission members, they plan on having future fundraisers, and I'd hate to see us limit ourselves by slashing their funding and kind of chopping them at the knees when we could be supporting this.
I agree that, I think that they can be a very vital thing for our community, but all they have to do is design a budget, make their pitch to city, and go from there, just like any other commission would, you know, so.
Well, it's, just to clarify, though, that it is, what we would actually be doing today would be taking the current budget and amending it. So what we're doing essentially is putting up some roadblocks, in my opinion. Respectfully, Glenn.
Well, this is going to June, so,
Right, but they are already slated for $4,850. So just to be clear, what we're doing is we're proposing that we slash that, and that's exactly what we would be doing tonight.
For
And that's-
equipment purchases. That's the line item. The line item is for equipment purchases.
They've already made their
and
purchases.
yeah, and that's just a carryover from the original line item
Their
that had
lights
been to
and
buy
their-
the
their-
gallery down for the lobby, so.
Well, to your point, I mean, we have the money in there. We could I guess we could demand receipts from them and see where they're going to put it and adjust it. I don't really feel confident.
Yeah, we have to do that.
Well, I don't really feel confident just cutting this money tonight. I don't think that's prudent.
Well, part of the problem was we didn't have a city manager last year, and, well, I'm sorry, we had an interim city manager, that we were trying to make a budget that really didn't get into a lot of detail because we were in the hiring process of a new city manager and interviewing. I think at this point, I know I'm kind of shocked because this is kind of like a reversal from how it was when it came out in the first place, on that we didn't want to fund another commission in the city when we were trying to get this passed originally. I have no problem, looking at their funding, but I also want to see what they're spending the money on in the form of a detailed budget. Because right now, what you basically have is a carryover from the last, 2 years? For the equipment rental, or equipment purchase of $6,500. And I'd like to know what they're spending the money for. Because I know that was a big concern of council when we we voted to enact this cultural commission because of the funding. I mean, it was going to be one of those where it was going to come back every year, and I think there was a lot of concern on this council about we didn't want to be in a position.
Not by everybody.
Not by everybody, but there was some concern. I remember that clearly, that there was some concern that when this came back every year, we'd be in a position of having to fund another commission. So I think in order for them to, request money, I think we should see what it's going for, and that's all I'm
I
saying.
think absolutely. And I don't have any misgivings at all with demanding that we have an understanding of where they anticipate spending money. That
Right.
if it's justifiable, I don't see any reason, especially when you're talking about the amounts that we're talking here. To leave that in there for the time being certainly isn't going to impact the vitality of the city's budget. So,
Right.
we could do that, but and this is just my own 2 cents worth, I like the idea of departments and entities that are asking for money to come out of our funds to be able to make a narrative statement of what they're going to, and try to dial it in as close as is reasonable. You don't have to have it dollar for dollar, but try to get into the ballpark. If something comes up that you hadn't projected, we have a fund balance that we can always end up amending our budget. So I don't think that that's asking all that much. And it gives us the ability to actually project where we want to go financially.
And it throws the onus on them to, you know, show us.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
So I'm not opposed to having a detailed plan and receipts. I think that's actually what all of our departments should be doing. And that's just to
And
be
I-
clear, just to be clear. And what I'm saying, though, is I just don't really feel comfortable when we have it in this budget right now to take it out and then put those hurdles. I think if they make a case and there's not a case for 4,800 out, 4,850, then yeah, we can revisit it. But to say, okay, we're going to take it out tonight because they haven't given us receipts, we're kind of
Oh, do-
setting up the hurdles.
They haven't asked
I mean,
for
or
anything.
a budget. I mean,
No, that's the thing, they haven't been asking.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
and does anyone know, does the Cultural Arts Commission have plans to buy equipment, $4,000 worth of equipment, yet this year?
They do have, I've met with the Cultural Arts President several times in the last week and a half since I came back. There is some equipment that they would like to purchase. There is also some additional things that they would like to get to have. They've got the Student Art Show coming up, end of April, early May. Different things that they need for that. Frames that last year were donated on a temporary basis is something that they would like to purchase specifically so that they have them for year after year. A PA-type system with the ability to connect some type of music to have during the gallery arts, as well as some funding for the DIA, but the DIA exhibit will be in the next fiscal year. I've also talked to Kelly about providing a detailed budget for the next fiscal year and the year after that, so that we can make sure to present it to the council when we bring the full budget for the next fiscal years, for you to make a decision on how you want to fund them.
can I ask when that conversation,
I met with her last Thursday, last Friday, and again this morning.
so they weren't aware until last Thursday that they needed to provide a detailed budget. Is that correct?
They weren't aware, to my knowledge. I don't know if Rod asked them to provide a detailed budget last year or not.
Okay, so I guess, again, I don't want to try and beat a dead horse here. It's just, if they didn't know until last week, they had to provide what their proposal was. I think it's a little unfair to take the money away and then say, it's only been a week. I mean, like you said, we can always amend the budget. I just feel more comfortable leaving it in here, support the arts, and then if we need to adjust it, we'll revisit it. I mean,
Why wouldn't we ask them to justify what their expenditures are, though? I mean, get prior
well,
approval.
we have plenty
Well,
of other.
actually, any expenditures they would do would be approved prior, whether you take this money out of the budget right now or not. Of the money that 1,000 that's left, they would still have to have it pre-approved because they'll need purchase orders. They'll get better rates if they go through city vendors because we have discounted preferences. And I've already talked to Kelly about that and making sure that we can provide them with the things that they need for their upcoming shows.
I just would hate for this to be set up where they see a number there, and then they're trying to scramble to find ways to pretty much exhaust whatever balance they have in that account.
I believe Lori and I both had conversations with them, and they understand that would not be the case. Yeah.
I spoke with Kelly at length today, at the end of the day. This fiscal year, they've only spent $80. So the 1,035 is what they raised last year. They've only spent $80 of that. That still leaves them with roughly $950 to do this next event before the end of the fiscal year. I feel that's kind of enough money till the end of this year. I also sat with her, and we tried to come up with different ideas how they can do some different fundraisings and get the word out that they're even a commission, because I don't think they've really advertised that much. So we talked about perhaps working with Pumpkin Fest, perhaps having a booth at Farmers Market a couple times this summer, just as an informational thing, just to get the word out, and that they are open for contributions. I talked to her about getting sponsorships from the local businesses, getting in-kind donations for, like, they wanted to have refreshments and things of that nature at their next show. Where some of these things can be donated, I suggested going to Bush's, Kroger's, and getting some of that stuff donated. And she seemed to be open to that. As far as like equipment, she said she wanted to buy a tent. Those aren't a great deal of money, it's just a 10 by 10 tent. She wants to get, like she said, a PA system, and those are fairly inexpensive, $200 to $300 maybe, as far as equipment goes. So their equipment isn't, they don't need a lot right now. So I was just trying to clean up the budget, go as to what council had said before, and I looked up all the minutes. And even their, I think their chair at the time came back and said, no, this is all we need. This, just for this first purchase. And then they kind of, she laid out a plan of how they were gonna, rent spaces to artists and take a commission. So there is an opportunity there for them to start raising money. They've gotten off to a slow start this year. My understanding is Kelly's been doing a lot of the work herself. It's hard when you're the only one that's pushing. So, as far as the equipment goes, I think they're pretty well set this year. I think they have enough in their budget to do the shows that they need to do this year. And then next year, we can sit down, I'm willing to help, get her set up with some things and give suggestions.
I have
Lori, just a
two
second, Harvey
thoughts.
has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Thank you. You mentioned a number, Lori, that they have remaining in their budget from their, fundraiser?
Last year, they took in 1,035.
Okay.
This year, they spent 80 of it.
My question is, where does that show up on the revenue, on the general fund revenues?
On the general fund revenue, there's a
Miscellaneous?
contribution to Cultural Arts Society. I believe it's 101,675-6. Now, this current fiscal year,
I don't see it.
they took
I
in
think I had seen it somewhere
$6.30. And that was through a deal they had set up with Hillers. At the checkout, you could, if you wanted to contribute money to it, and that's what they got. I'm not sure how that works. I didn't set it up.
You got a question, Blair?
Yeah, two things, actually. I think that this group is different than other commissions. If they're generating revenues as a product of their soliciting contributions, even if it's contributions in kind, I don't think that that their budget should end up being penalized because it goes into the general fund. I'd like to see that be a rolling tally. But at the same time, I'd like to see them not feel compelled to max that spending annually. If they're doing what I think is important, they're kind of trying to determine what their long-term goal is, try to assign some kind of cost to what that'll be to get there, and then kind of over accruing year to year, be able to grow that money to be able to accomplish that. And secondly, the PA that the farmer's market uses, that's the city's asset, isn't it?
I believe so.
I wonder if that might end up
yeah,
being a
they-
stopgap for them in the interim.
Yeah, they could probably borrow. I don't see why they couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
But that was, the farmer's market falls under the DDA.
Oh, I see.
So any
I thought we
equipment-
bought that for them.
Any equipment the farmer's market bought came from DDA funds.
Okay.
So, the other thing I suggested to Kelly, and I think you may have well, is perhaps becoming a separate entity, like the Historical Society, the 501c3.
Right.
Because she wanted to be able to go out and buy things and then just get reimbursed for it. And that's kind of not the way we have to work it. It's not a bad thing to do, but it's something you don't want to get in the habit of. You want to pay directly to the vendor rather than reimbursing. So if they were their own entity, they could fundraise their own money, spend it however their board decides. We wouldn't, have to necessarily fall under that. And then I also suggested if they do that, that perhaps that they could come to council and ask for a contribution. That's another way to get some funding to them.
Or they could
where-
just fill out a budget to us, and then we could supplement what they can't
Well, we
do
could
on
build
their
it into our
501c3.
administrative budget as a contribution. We do it for youth assistance, senior center, all the other, larger
But then-
amounts, of course.
That's a
but-
known quantity, though. We know what we're contributing for.
Right,
Where
and-
if they don't make out a budget for us, I don't want to just see a block of money go there and then they get to
I don't think
disperse
they're
it
gonna
how
ask
they
for a
need to.
great deal, I think maybe $1,000 to $2,000. And I wouldn't expect that every year. Just if they have a special thing that they want to do, or perhaps a bigger, larger piece of equipment, if they find something that they think they need, then perhaps then they can come to council and ask for a contribution of some sort. But that was
Yeah,
just
I mean,
talking.
I don't want
That
to
was
beat it
just-
to death, but I don't think putting a budget together, you don't have to say, I want 4 vases to, put on the table with the food and stuff.
And
Yes, yes.
Mr. Mayor, to point out, we're not gutting their entire budget. They still have line items for office supplies, operating expense, and community promotion.
Right.
So all the manager is recommending is to remove the $4,000 for equipment purchases,
Right, and then
which
wait-
were made
bumped up
the
one of the
original
others.
year and probably just carried over at a smaller amount because that's what they asked us for to begin with.
Right.
Seed money to get started to buy some equipment, easels, and display items.
And Harvey, things change over, this would,
I just want
yeah.
to make
That's
sure that the
exactly what we
record is
did. We
clear,
pulled
we're
out
not
the
gutting
equipment
the
one.
entire budget.
I just wanted to, make the budget match what they had raised the prior year.
Right.
So we pulled the equipment out, and then I think I bumped up one other community promotions or something. So it's really a reduction of 3815, I believe.
Yeah, they certainly shouldn't be penalized for receiving contributions, so I agree.
All right, let's beat up on Bob now. No.
Yeah. Thank you.
I still have a couple issues on the general fund, if I may.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, thank you. First of all, let me say how delighted I am to see budget amendments. On the general fund budget, there's some changes between line items, but the total increase is 76, almost $7,700. Where is the money coming from for that increase?
I would imagine fund balance.
From
Fund balance?
fund balance?
Unbalanced.
Okay. And then I have the same question on the enterprise funds. There's a total of 43,450 budget amendments. I'm guessing that some of these for the water and sewer were part of the grant, and some of those funds still exist that can, that'll be applied to those?
Yes.
Okay. And anything else that doesn't covered by the grants, that'll come from the fund balance of that enterprise fund,
Correct.
correct? And those fund balances can handle those amounts? Okay, because there were almost $500,000 here in budget amendments with no revenues.
I think the biggest part of that was the DWRF.
Yeah, the majority of it is DWRF. The repair and maintenance on the manhole, that is the authorization you gave us.
Right.
And that was already expected to come from the fund balance because it hadn't been budgeted this year.
Right.
The insurance and bonds, that was one of those things, we had our review by MMRMA. They brought in an outside person to review all of the property and equipment and locations of the city, and so that was a completely unexpected increase in our premiums. So the nice check that we got from MMRA for a reduction, to some extent goes back and gets divided among all of those departments where we paid in for insurance, and now we're taking out. So there was some revenue that isn't reflected in this that offsets that. For the auditor expense and the others, the rest are all DWRF, and there is still some of the grant funds. I know HRC is still working with Brico on a couple of quantities that they are not sure they're going to approve. So, but we, as Lori said, we're attempting to clean up the budget at this point. It's coming to the end of the third quarter. We're working on the next year's budget, and it's better for me to have good, solid numbers, knowing where we're going into the next year as I do that.
Absolutely agree. So the contractual services in the water and sewer, which is 264,000, that's anticipated to be covered by our grant yet?
At least part of it, yes. I mean, the grant was, I believe, a 50/50 grant, so you would assume that half of it would be covered.
For DWR,
Why was there such a?
No.
we were given 50%.
Okay.
There was a forgiveness of that.
Correct.
Oh, that's right.
Forgiveness, yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, those costs have already been covered by the DWRF, which is 64.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, I guess that's all I have. I was concerned that we had, all our budget amendments were expenditures.
And
And there was a couple of balancings between line items, that's okay, I don't have any problem with that. But I wasn't seeing any
Significant revenue
revenues
increases.
to cover those, or even explanations of where the money was coming from, if it was already in our budget from prior year.
I understand.
But like I said, I'm delighted to see some budget amendments. I hope we do it more frequently, and I appreciate the effort.
Okay,
Thank you.
and that completes the discussion on the budgets amendments. All right, now a manager report.
Well, actually, we have to make a
Oh, okay,
motion to
okay.
approve or not approve.
I'm sorry,
I'll move
yep.
to approve the proposed budget amendments as presented.
Were
by
they
the
all
city.
in one group?
I'll support it.
Yes,
That's one thing I didn't get a chance to see. Okay,
I broke them all out.
okay. All right, you made that motion, support was for Glenn. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
All right, now manager's report.
I want to tell you how glad I am to be back to work. Working not solely, but specifically on the budget. Would like to meet with most of the department heads by the end of this week. Obviously, Chief Collins is out of town on vacation, so I won't be meeting with him. By charter, you should have a preliminary budget for you to review early April and to make determinations on at that first meeting in April, because according to the city charter, we have to have it approved by the end of April. So that's the majority of my time being spent right now. I did go out with Bob last week and look at a couple of different locations in the community that we had some concern expressed about the conditions of roads where they dead end against the railroad. We are looking into specifically where that is, whether that's city property or railroad right-of-way. If it's city property, we will block it off. If not, we will talk to the railroad. It's very muddy and getting tracked. I don't know if it's the railroad equipment that's turning around in there, but it's creating a hazard to the use of that road. And I've also received some information from Councilman Rizzi, as well as residents came in today requesting information about the developer for the Knowles parking on city streets instead of using Mill Street as they requested. We've sent a letter, an email to Paul Elko asking for an explanation and reminding him of their commitment not to use Grand Court and Kestrel Court for the construction equipment. If I don't hear from him by tomorrow, my intention is to ask the police department to go out and speak with the construction employees and let them know that what they're doing is in violation of the agreement and that they need to move that equipment.
Good.
Okay, all right.
I think we should be willing to red tag that project too if they don't comply, so.
I agree.
All righty. Okay, Glenn, we'll go to you.
We keep getting hit with the cycles of warm and cold, and I'm hoping we move more and more warm. So,
How about Wednesday?
Yes, exactly, one day.
Rain.
Yeah.
With rain, 90%, yeah.
My wife and I were out walking on the bike path, and it was really nice. That there's an awful lot of work that's going to be necessary in not too long a time period, because the paving is in really sketchy condition. But it was nice in that there wasn't a lot of garbage. I was worried when the snow melts and stuff, and, you know, there's a lot of trash strewn around there.
Been
and
down there getting it.
Yes, it would look really nice, so I thought that was terrific, so, but I do want to I don't know if there's been any consideration in the future budget, but the three groups are gonna have to get together and start looking at maintenance on repaving and that, so I
Bob has
guess each
actually put
area.
in his 5-year capital plan, the intention for funds to repave the city's portion of the trails.
Yeah, yeah, okay, that's important. That's all I really had. Thanks.
Okay, Joe?
City Manager Leonard, just want to thank you for speaking to, or leaving a message for Elko. I remember very vividly him sitting right there in the stands, saying that is not a problem, shaking his head. And so if you need it, I have some pictures of where the vehicles were parked, so I don't think that it's necessary, but it's a shame. So hopefully that gets straightened out, so thank you. Also wanted to address the public comment from Mr. Spaller, and also want to actually thank you for coming forward. Just so everybody's aware, what he was referencing, the letter about the potential proposed rec center, that was delivered to all of us. It was a letter that was signed by kind of 26 people. And I just want to read a few lines from it. It says, "This is in reply to the letter submitted by Sharon B. on the new recreation center being proposed in McCady Park. I feel that the space in McCady Park should stay a green area. The way I see it is there are a lot of new growth here in South Lyon, and there's not a lot of green space remaining for these young families with kids to go and play." He says some other things, but goes on by saying, "One more area of concern is the traffic. Please know that the majority of seniors live in the north part of South Lyon, and traveling through the center of town is not a favorable commute." So just to go off of that letter, look, I've been approached by many residents, senior citizens, families, business owners, new residents, longtime residents, college students, and the overwhelming feeling is that a center does not belong in McCady Park. We look around and we look at our South Lyon area, and Lyon Township is 3 times as big as South Lyon. Many open fields, and McCady Park is the epicenter of our city. And to put a recreation center there and destroy the open field and the green space, I think is really disservice to our city. So I just want to reiterate what I'm hearing from citizens, and just want to let you know I'm listening, because I think we need to save McCady Park. Thank you.
Bev?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Mike?
Well, as the chairperson of the rec committee, I thank you for your comments, Mr. Reezy. Considering you were at the meeting Tuesday night and I spent 2 hours trying to explain to the residents that were in attendance, our intention is not to destroy McCady Park at all. Quite frankly, apparently what we're missing here is why we're doing this. It's a feasibility study to see if it can be done. We have spent 18 months with 3 communities looking at various properties all over Green Oak Township, Lyon Township, and South Lyon, trying to find a location that would be a spot where the 3 communities can actually agree on. It came down to somewhere in the area of South Lyon just because of Green Oak Township and Lyon Township. I gotta be honest with you, the first time we did this, it was a $30 million price tag. There's no way it was gonna happen. One of the reasons why we're looking at McCady Park is, number one, we're not putting a $30 million facility at that location. It's a situation where if you look at land prices, if you look at utilities involved, McCady Park, and location, McCady Park is a city-owned piece of property. We're not going out having to purchase property from a private individual. Utilities are there, so that's going to cut the cost down as well. It's not a situation where we would have to extend the utilities to parts of Lyon Township or Green Oak Township where there might not be any utilities. And the bottom line is, if we come up with a price that, again, is one of those situations where, like, I'm the chair, I'm not going to vote for it, the last thing we're going to do is present it to the residents of the three communities to vote for. All we're trying to do is to see if this can work. Now, obviously, you have a problem with McCaddy Park, because I don't think you understand where we're going to put it if it goes there, number one. Number two, we are not moving the senior center. That was never the intention. We understand the location is great. But we're looking at a rec center that our senior population would like to use. It's a situation where we're trying to make a rec center that all ages of our population can enjoy. Again, we're working with three communities. It's taken us 18 months to get where we're at right now. This is not a situation where one day we just decided, let's throw a dart at a map of Lyon Township, Green Oak Township, and South Lyon to see where we're going to put it. We have spent a lot of time, and again, we are dealing with three communities, not just South Lyon. So there's a lot of things we're looking at. We're looking at price, but one of the big advantages of McCaddy Park from Lyon Township, Green Oak Township, and South Lyon is that the city owns it and the utilities are there. Again, if it comes back and it's something that we wouldn't recommend to our various township boards or our city council right here, we're not going to do it. We're just trying to see if it could be done. And the cooperation that we're getting from the three communities has been nothing short of amazing. We have three communities that are actively trying to build a project that would benefit all three communities if it's feasible, and that's what we're looking at. So apparently I wasn't going to say anything. Now I had to say something, so thanks.
Okay. Harvey?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Well, I went on a whirlwind trip in the last few days. In fact, this morning I was in Denmark, and then I was in Germany, and I made it here by the skin of my teeth because I didn't realize customs takes so long when you come back. But I did go to the funeral of the man who attempted to save my life, and it was certainly it was a way of healing for both sides. And the people of Denmark are phenomenal people. If you've ever been to Denmark, their motto is, we're a happy people, we got nothing better to do.
That's pretty casual.
Yeah. And when I arrived, I got a phone call, or the man who picked me up from the airport got a phone call while we were driving to town. It was the mayor of Randers. Randers, a town of approximately 60,000 people. He invited me for lunch the next day, and I was very pleased at the thought because I was hoping to see him for 2 minutes because I wanted to present a key to the city of our hearts and love from South Lyon to the family, and I wanted to have permission to give a key to the city in his city. He was just overwhelmed. He thought that was wonderful. He also provided lunch. We had an hour and 10-minute visit. He said he had looked up our webpage and studied South Lyon. He thought it was just a beautiful little town and had nothing but nice things to say. And then we even got into Obamacare. And he pointed out that they're at 50% tax rate in Denmark. I mean, that's just amazing. Yeah. That half their money they make goes to taxes. Their minimum wage is $16.50, but half of it's gone in taxes. So they're right to basically where we're at. So we had interesting things to talk about, and he also, within the price range, you're allowed to take gifts. He gave me a little model of their city hall, and I'll put it in my wife's Christmas village. And so it was really a chance for me to get some closure, and the family was so kind. They are a special people. They really are. And the funeral itself, he had 110 bouquets of flowers there. You never saw such beauty everywhere. And in a 1597 church. It was built in 1597. And it was just it's helped me already. I'm glad I went. And I got to carry the city banner. And they actually had a front page story. And South Lyon was well versed through it. I couldn't read it, it's in Danish, but they assured me that it was very sobering and very. They thought it was very well done for that reporter. That they had been no embellishment. They just thought it was done nicely, and that South Lyon. I like to feel that I represented them well there, and I would recommend going to Denmark. There's not, they say there's something rotten in Denmark, but but I didn't find that. I did not find that. And considering the fact that I have been up now for 24 hours and 15 minutes, I'm a little beat here, but I don't know how these politicians or even the president can travel these trips like they do, because that is a long ways away. So
Did you like running through Schiphol from one end of the airport to the other to get out?
they got a lot of freebie stuff. The bus will run you free, and you can hit the terminals real fast, and they did pretty well there. But so we're going to be having a closed session, executive session here coming up. So we're going to have to ask to clear the house, and we thank you for attending tonight.
Mr. Mayor, we need a motion and a vote.
Okay.
I move we close for executive session pursuant to Section 8E and H of the Open Meetings Act.
A second.
All right. All in favor, say aye. Or roll call. Roll
yeah.
call.
Kevil,
Yes.
Rizzi, Wallace,
Yes.
Waddell,
Yes.
Kramer,
Yes.
Dixon. Yes.
Yeah. Take a minute.
Are you okay, Bev?
Well, Ted, I'm kind of surprised by the casual nature of their motto because they're really industrious nature.
Yeah. You should see